Now that leaves us with two items, items 17 and 18, both of which I'm assuming are going to be reasonably meaty. Let's start on item 17. We do need to break for lunch at 12:30. So we do need to break at 12:30. So if we get part way through, we'll need to break part way through and then come back to it. Okay, so you'll note that there's a resolution from the Funding Review Working Group that happened just yesterday afternoon, and they really just wanted to recommend that, well, so they're recommending that Council note that the 80-20 option considered at the 13th of December Council meeting, so that was the staff recommendation at the 13th of December Council meeting, remains a feasible option. So that's not set out in the paragraph in the report where the feasible options are listed, but all of the information that we would need to consider the 80-20 option, if we wish to, is contained within the report.
Yesterday's meeting.
So the only recommendation coming out of yesterday's meeting is the Funding Review Working Group recommends that Council note that the 80-20 option considered at the 13th of December Council meeting remains a feasible option to be considered. That was the only output from that meeting yesterday.
Synthetic. What are they? They've been meeting for ages. What are they actually recommending?
So that's the recommendation.
80-20.
No. If you, the Funding Review Working Party, if we look at what they're actually recommending, they're recommending that Council note that the 80-20 option considered at the 13th December Council meeting remains a feasible option to be considered. They're not recommending any particular option to Council.
70-30.
So there's a staff recommendation of 70-30.
Right.
And then, I mean, there are other options in the report. There's the 100%, there's the 80-20, which is the one that the Funding Review Working Group are drawing attention to. There's the 70-30, which is the staff recommendation. And there is the 60-40, which is also there in the report as well.
So effectively they're recommending 80-20, staff are recommending 70-30.
Well, no, I don't think we can say that the Funding Review Working Group are recommending 80-20. No. You'll note in the paragraph in the report...
They've been meeting for 15 months. Oh, sorry.
Let me just get the relevant paragraph in front of me. You'll note that in paragraph 4.2 of the report, there are three options. What the Funding Review Working Group are essentially saying is there should also be a fourth option there, which is also a feasible option, which was considered on the 13th of December, but is no longer showing as an option that's feasible in this report, which is 80-20, and it should be showing as a feasible option. So that's all they're saying. They're not recommending that we adopt any particular one. They are just saying, don't forget that the 80-20 is there and consider that to be a feasible option in your debate today. Phil.
Thank you. Just from the report, I would like to at least flag or move an amendment and to support option 2, which is to retain.
Well, it's not. If you're moving option 2, then you're moving option 2.
I'm prepared to move option 2.
So you're going to move option 2, which is 60-40, and Tim, you'll second that. So that puts 60-40 on the table. I'm assuming that somebody, well, maybe not. Let's just see how things go.
Can I signal an amendment to that then, Mr. Chair?
Well, do you want to foreshadow a further motion in the event that that's lost?
Yeah, I suppose it's...
Because I'm guessing that you're not going to want to change the option. You're wanting to move something different. So in the event that this is lost...
Whatever works best for that, I guess so, because it's not necessarily a direct negative, though, but it's just a variation of the split, obviously. So, look, if you're most comfortable with that and that works easiest, then that's fine by me.
So are you foreshadowing moving a different option?
Yeah, well, I'll foreshadow 100% population.
Option 3. And you will second that. So okay, that's fine. All right. Let's deal with what's on the table already, which is the 60-40, and see where we go from there.
Should I just debate it at the same time?
Well, no, because depending where the 60-40 goes, we might end up with, you've foreshadowed something.
Well, is an amendment better than that case?
No. I'm happy to deal with what you've foreshadowed. That's fine. but it may well be that others are, depending what happens with the 60/40, there may be a further foreshadowed motion in the event that yours is lost.
In the event that we get to that point.
It's,
okay, that's fine.
It's important that we follow a clear process, because we need to end up with a result that means something, not just one where everything's voted down and we're left with nothing.
Okay, well, I'll then signal option 3 as the foreshadowed motion.
Okay, great. So 60/40 is what's on the table. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, so debate on the 60/40. Phil.
So look, councillors, I certainly believe that option 2 has been the status quo for some time, is by far the best option for us as a council to support the community boards in terms of their funding. And the other part of that too, of course, is that there be the rural community development adjustment for Banks Peninsula Ward. In the report, I think that the argument to reduce the amount of equity, which is like some indicators of social deprivation, that's what it means, is that rates are already progressive, and that's in the report, and so that there's already a redistribution. However, we know that a large proportion of our Christchurch people, in fact, for starters, don't pay rates; they have to pay rents. And so, often they are already disadvantaged. What I want to talk about is the strength of what we have been doing as a council with the formula we've had, really, with projects such as that community boards like mine perhaps have supported for a long time. And I think all of the boards have done these. And the ward that Tim and I represent, Rowley House and Manuka Cottage in Addington, Waltham Cottage is now in the Linwood ward, and also Te Whareramata. They're excellent examples of what in fact has been community development. Unfortunately, the report pulls them into the category of being like social service providers, and I think in fact that's not sufficient, because the whole community development approach and the work that's being done, it gives people who've been struggling a long time, it gives them a hand up rather than a hand out, which I guess the social service argument sort of implies. And if you look at the table on page 247, an example of that is if we were to move to the 70% population and 30% equity, I think you'll find that in terms of a ward with far lesser need in quite a relatively wealthy areas like Fendleton, Waimari, there's an increase there of 40,000, and in effect from that table that's at the expense of Linwood Central and Ferrymead Ward, because they lose $40,000. And so my argument really is that what we need to look at as a council, by adopting the current status quo, is that we have to look at how in fact we build social capital, which is in the report, but there's a far greater need for that social capital building in the poorer areas than there is in the affluent areas. And for those reasons, I'm certainly putting forward option 2.
Thank you. Further debate on option 2. Jamie.
And is that appropriate then if I essentially, I guess when I debate this, I'm going to be alluding to what the foreshadowed motion
is? That's
is in
fine.
the interest of time.
Absolutely fine.
So look, why I foreshadowed that motion and why I disagree with what Phil's moved is because fundamentally I don't believe that the deprivation index is a reliable tool to use. That's just the essence of it. The deprivation index is a really blunt instrument, and if you drill down to it, the people who need this fund are the ones that are applying for it, and we've got excellent staff that apply excellent judgment on this. So look at if you let me take back a step. If you say that based on deprivation, it sounds like a great idea, and you go, okay, those in need most will get it. But that's just not the case with this. It actually doesn't account for anyone actually over the age of 65 in the measures for it. Migrants, the elderly people, people who are lonely, people who want to be engaged in the community desperately but are unable to be. This is the entire purpose of what this fund is about. Really ignores that, and you can draw to the deprivation index, which sounds like it could be a decent weighting. But if you look at what the weightings are and the metrics that make that up, you realise how fundamentally flawed it is, and hence why we've been having these conversations around how we bypass this and apply some better judgment to it. So I'm suggesting if you do it on population, you're taking a Christchurch and Inc approach. You look at it through the eyes of our great staff and the people that we've got that have been elected to this role to make those judgment calls, and you can apply it to ensure that those needy people that might not neatly fit into a category are actually being looked after. So just go to the government website and look at what the fact is about 8 or so, and you just realise what a blunt tool it is. So to assign such a large weighting to a blunt mathematical tool, I think doesn't address the issue, and there are just so many people that are going to be left out in the cold for that. So take a high level approach, apply good judgment, and please don't endorse a blunt instrument which just means people that need this fund are actually going to be missing out.
Thank you. Glenn and then Aaron.
Thank you. If I go back to kind of first principles and I ask what is this about, this is about strengthening communities. So we all know that in the best of times we need to build up capacity in our communities. I'm trying to avoid the word resilience, and in the worst times, post natural disaster, we want to further strengthen them so that they are more self-sufficient as well as being interdependent when it comes to really tough times, and they need to draw on their resources and work together in order to make some progress. A conversation with Matthew Mark just prior to Christmas, when this council, people won't know this, the staff behind the scenes when it comes to the city mission, they have a tremendous relationship. They do great things in terms of their response to the city. The food bank demand was up 40% in the last year, okay? Christchurch, food bank demand up 40%. So we've got a different flavoured government now with different priorities, such as a wellbeing index. It's going to be a long time, is my conclusion, before we are out of the woods. When I look at the deprivation index, to me that's quantitative data, okay? It's actual measurable, specific data upon which to make good decisions, and it, in many ways it matches up what we might call our observable data as we move in our communities. My view on this is that we have a social constituency. We need to, in my view, look across our city with that lens on, rather than looking at it as with a ward lens. We need to look at our city in that way. And so, on that, if we take an equitable approach, which is not about equalness but equitability, that takes me to a 60-40 option. In my view, we need to do it. We are signing off on a lot of big projects in the next while, but if we don't have our people, if we don't have a sense of strength in our communities, if we don't grow the well-being, then I think we're not getting as far as we thought we would.
Thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, okay, so just I will be, I seconded Jamie's foreshadowed change to option 3, which is the 100%, mainly because I believe in, I know you shouldn't use the F word in here, fairness, but it is a case of fairness here, and the irony of using the deprivation index where the richest poor people in the country are in the Fendleton ward, just by using that measure, because they're in the Fendleton ward. Doesn't matter that they're the second largest state housing community in the entire city. Doesn't matter that they need food parcels. It doesn't matter that one of our local churches gives kids toothbrushes and toothpaste because their parents don't have it. They live in Fendleton, so that by default, according to this, they're quite wealthy, so that community needs less support. The way I see this fund is it's all of ratepayers in Christchurch put money in a bucket. The bucket here is $3.1 million. That bucket then gets split up to different community boards who are a representative of that community to decide how they will strengthen their community. And if it's an equal amount, so if you've got, name your however many thousand people and it's $9 a head, you've got $9 a head to spend on strengthening your community. But the way of doing it 60-40 is that some areas will have a lot more to spend in their areas versus others, which says to the community groups in the Fendalton Waimari Herwood ward that your projects in your community aren't as valuable as the ones on the other side of town, so we will give them a whole lot more money. And that's how I get the feedback from my ward. That's how I see it, and I agree with the people that live there that this fund should be just spread evenly for each community to decide on how they themselves will strengthen their own community. So 100% is what I will be supporting.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. Look, fundamentally I think we've created a problem for ourselves going back into last term when we decided we were going to go from 13 councillors to 16 councillors, which has then sort of made it difficult creating wards. We've got different population bases, and so whilst I support the population base, I also think, and I acknowledge Councillor Clearwater in terms of respecting equity. I mean, my ward, for example, has lost a huge amount of population post-earthquake. I'm not sure, and it's probably a question we should have asked, what census are these figures based on?
2013.
Because I know my ward is growing quite substantially with new staff, and so our population is increasing. So I have a degree of empathy for population, but the way we are now forced to sort of create our wards, some with 3 councillors, some with 2, it actually means that, you know, having early Innes, go through Burwood and Stratton, Cashmere, by virtue of the way we are delineating our border areas, have less to spend. However, tongue in cheek, I'd actually probably quite like to
support the 70-30, although the dollars don't stack up. I see coastal Burwood's allowed to spend $99 per person. So, but look, although I have an empathy for the population basis, I support Phil in saying the 60-40 has proved to be a reasonable formula for what I call a problem issue with the way we are structured as community boards now.
Thank you. Now, whilst I realise that breaking mid-debate isn't really ideal, when we started this item I indicated that we would need to stop at 12:30, and that's where we've got to. So when we come back, and we will be back at 1:30, and obviously we'll be working with whoever's in the room at that time, we will continue this debate and then we'll take a vote.
I have a funeral. I really want to vote on this.
No, I did indicate when we started the item that we would need to break, because we need to break at 12:30, and we can't take a vote until we've finished the debate.
Is there a standing order on that? I think I should be entitled to vote. We've already begun the agenda.
Presumably, if Glenn wanted to, depending on your timing, you could Skype into that part of the meeting and be part of the vote that way. I'll adjourn the meeting until 1:30, and we'll be back here at 1:30 to continue the debate.